Throughout history, attacking a castle has always been one of the greatest challenges for any army. To break through heavily fortified defenses and breach the walls, invading forces had to devise countless strategies. One of the lesser-known yet extremely dangerous tactics was undermining, also known as sapping. This method involved secretly digging tunnels beneath the ground, aiming to reach the base of castle walls or watchtowers. Inside these tunnels, soldiers would install wooden supports to hold the structure above, then pack the area with dry kindling and flammable materials. At the right moment, they would ignite the tunnel, causing the supports to collapse and bringing down part of the wall, creating a sudden breach that allowed attackers to flood in, catching defenders off guard. As castle architecture advanced, with taller walls, deeper foundations, and stronger construction, traditional siege methods became less effective. This pushed many armies to adopt the underground approach of sapping to gain the upper hand. Despite facing challenges like deep stone foundations or natural obstacles such as moats, this method wasn't entirely eliminated. In fact, it remained a key strategy throughout the medieval period and even persisted in various forms in later eras. There is evidence suggesting that underground warfare dates back thousands of years, and it was still used as recently as the World Wars. Although its use declined after the medieval period due to shifts in how wars were fought, sapping remained a viable tactic in specific scenarios. With the introduction of gunpowder to Europe, this strategy became even more lethal. Rather than relying solely on fire to weaken structures, armies could now pack gunpowder into tunnels beneath critical fortifications and ignite massive explosions to demolish entire sections of wall. With a single blast, large portions of reinforced walls could be obliterated, allowing troops to storm the breach and take control from within. However, as defensive engineering evolved, military architects began building compressed earth foundations that could absorb shockwaves from explosions, minimizing the damage. Defensive forces also started placing soldiers underground and constructing counter-tunnels to detect and disrupt enemy sapping attempts. Over the centuries, as modern warfare technology emerged, the role of sapping diminished. Yet, in some regions of the world, this ancient strategy is still applied today, albeit on a much smaller scale than before. In times of unrest, as rebellion whispers across the countryside and nations teeter on the brink of chaos, people remember an age where even the strongest castles could fall from beneath. Amid this chaos, another story begins. Welcome to Belright, a vast open-world medieval survival and strategy game playable solo or cooperatively with allies. In Belright, players take on the role of a character whose childhood was shattered after being falsely accused of assassinating the crown prince. Forced into exile, your survival was secured only by a loyal family friend. Now, after years of wandering, you return to uncover the truth and restore justice in a kingdom rotting from corruption. Powered by the stunning Unreal Engine 5, Belright takes you from humble beginnings in a small village to leading a full-scale rebellion. Recruit allies, expand your forces, develop technology, and rise to challenge tyranny, reclaiming the future of your homeland, one battle at a time. Powered by the cutting-edge graphics of Unreal Engine 5, Belright opens the gates to a vast medieval world teeming with opportunity and danger. Players begin their journey as an exiled commoner living in a remote village. From this humble starting point, you will gradually rise in power, build your forces, and ultimately lead a rebellion against a corrupt and decaying regime. On this path to revolution, you'll face a wide variety of enemies, from savage bandits and noblemen's mercenaries to the dark forces lurking behind the throne. Each region presents unique challenges that demand different strategies. To survive and thrive, you'll need to gather resources, expand your territory, research new technologies, and grow your army into a force to be reckoned with. Beyond combat, you can recruit workers and assign them tasks, from constructing buildings and forging weapons to hunting wildlife or harvesting food. These actions will help transform your modest village into a fortified stronghold and the central hub of the uprising. Belright is currently available in early access on Steam. Don't miss your chance to experience this one-of-a-kind survival strategy adventure. Click the link in the description to begin your epic journey today. While sapping, the tactic of undermining walls through tunnel digging, rose to prominence in the medieval era, its origins date back thousands of years. According to archaeological records, ancient civilizations had already begun using this technique around 4,000 years ago, digging tunnels beneath enemy fortifications to weaken their structural integrity and bring them crashing down. One notable example occurred during the siege of Ypres in the days of ancient Rome. Julius Caesar's troops used underground tunnels to cut off the enemy's only water supply, forcing the Gauls to surrender unconditionally. By the 3rd century CE, a brutal conflict revealed a particularly striking case of underground warfare combined with early chemical tactics. In 256 CE, during the siege of Dura Europus, a dynasty believed to be early Persians or Sasanians launched a large-scale sapping operation to collapse a section of the Western Wall, specifically around Tower 19, near the Palmyrene Gate. Their strategy involved digging a tunnel approximately 15 meters long, likely starting from an area of ancient burial tombs in the city's necropolis. After penetrating the softer soil layers, they encountered a tough limestone cap and near impenetrable bedrock, which they had to break through to reach the base of the targeted tower. Modern archaeologists later discovered that the Sasanians came very close to success. They had managed to seriously damage part of the foundation. However, what they didn't anticipate was that the Romans were also secretly digging counter-tunnels, aiming to intercept and halt the enemy's infiltration efforts. It's still unclear whether the two sides actually clashed underground face-to-face, but the final result tells a chilling story. More than 20 Roman soldiers' remains were uncovered during 20th century excavations. Grim evidence of the brutal, close-quarters battles fought in complete darkness, beneath the earth, where the only sounds were picks striking stone. Although the skeletal remains suggest that the Romans suffered heavy casualties underground, the outcome shows they were successful in preventing the Sasanians from breaching the city. Even though they had to collapse the entire tunnel network with explosive charges, the Romans held the line and kept their enemies from ever entering the stronghold. At Tower 19, the foundations showed slight subsidence, and while the upper structure was severely damaged, it did not fully collapse. This proved that although the Sasanians had followed the full process of sapping and came dangerously close to their objective, they failed to open a critical breach. Ultimately, the siege was won through other military strategies, not through undermining. It wasn't until the medieval era that the technique of sapping truly flourished and became a central element in siege warfare. No longer just a support tactic, underground assault became a decisive method for penetrating increasingly formidable castle defenses. One of the most iconic examples was the siege of Rochester Castle in 1215, during the early phase of the First Barons' War. The castle held a crucial position, guarding key routes from Dover and Canterbury into London. When rebel forces seized Rochester, King John of England reacted with full force. He destroyed Rochester Bridge to cut off reinforcements, deployed 5 heavy trebuchets along with archers, and began digging tunnels to target the southeast tower of the castle. The turning point came on November 25th, when King John personally ordered his loyal official Hubert de Burgh to find and transport 40 of the fattest pigs, not for food, but for their fat, which would be used as fuel to set fire to the wooden supports within the sapping tunnels. The fire was lit, and the intense heat caused an entire side of the castle's main keep to collapse. A breach was opened, allowing royal troops to storm in and retake the fortress. This was just one of several key battles in the civil war between the monarchy and rebellious barons, during which many royal strongholds fell into rebel hands. To reclaim them, the king's forces had to rely heavily on underground assault tactics, as traditional siege methods had become too costly and increasingly ineffective against modernized fortifications. Another significant example occurred just a year later, in 1216, during the siege of Dover Castle, a fortress often referred to as the Key to England due to its vital coastal defense position. This time, the leader of the rebel forces was Prince Louis of France, who personally led the assault. He chose to launch a direct underground attack, aiming to undermine and destroy the main outer gate. His strategy succeeded in bringing down one of the defensive towers, allowing his troops to seize control of the area surrounding it. However, despite this promising start, Louis was unable to penetrate the inner stronghold of the castle. That failure was largely due to the swift and decisive leadership of Hubert de Burgh, whom King John had entrusted with the defense of Dover. Following the collapse, Hubert immediately ordered reinforcements and repairs to the damaged sections, shoring up the defenses and halting the rebel advance. The Royal Knights held their ground with remarkable resilience, maintaining control of the fortress until King John's death later that year, which marked a turning point in the ongoing conflict. Although King John's passing signaled the end of a turbulent reign, it did not mean the end of sapping, the tactic of undermining fortifications on the medieval battlefield. On the contrary, this strategy continued to be refined and utilized, especially under the rule of his successor, King Henry III, John's son. One of the most striking examples of this came during the siege of Bedford Castle in 1224, just 8 years after King John's death. At that time, the castle was held by Lord Fawkes de Brut, a former royal loyalist who had fallen from grace. After repeatedly defying royal commands, most notably refusing to surrender the castle, Henry III launched a full-scale military campaign to take it back. The royal army advanced methodically. First, they breached the outer Barbican defenses, then moved to capture the outer bailey, before finally setting their sights on the inner bailey, the last major line of defense protecting the main keep. When it became clear that the inner walls were too strong to breach using conventional means, King Henry ordered his engineers to begin sapping operations. After days of digging and placing explosives beneath the keep, on August 14, 1224, the charges were detonated beneath the foundation. The result was catastrophic. A massive collapse dragged the entire tower downward, leaving deep, gaping cracks across the ancient stone. With their defenses shattered, the garrison had no choice but to surrender the next morning. The leaders of the rebellion were promptly executed by hanging, and Lord Fawkes de Brut was captured. He eventually begged the king for mercy and, 5 days later, was exiled from the kingdom. While tunneling tactics date back to ancient times, it wasn't until the Middle Ages that they truly became one of the most powerful weapons in siege warfare. Yet, their evolution didn't stop there. As the world entered the modern era, tunneling continued to be widely applied, especially during World War I, where trench warfare became a bloody hallmark of the conflict. On brutal battlefields like Ypres in Belgium, hundreds of tunnels were dug by British, French, and German forces alike. These weren't just used to approach enemy lines, but also to plant explosives or block supply routes. Underground combat wasn't uncommon, with opposing tunneling teams often running into each other in pitch-dark, narrow corridors, leading to deadly face-to-face clashes that were vastly different from traditional battlefield encounters. With the advancement of machinery and explosive technologies, the scale of destruction caused by tunneling grew more devastating than ever. In some cases, poison gas was even funneled into tunnels to eliminate enemy troops, an unmistakable sign of the fusion between sapping tactics and chemical warfare in the industrial age. During the Vietnam War, tunneling once again proved its effectiveness in real combat. The Viet Cong built extensive underground tunnel systems that allowed them to hide from air raids, launch ambushes, and disappear underground in seconds. It took the U.S. military a long time to fully uncover the true extent of these tunnels, especially in areas like Siu Chi and Cam Ranh Bay, which later became infamous for their intricate underground networks. Today, while sapping no longer plays the central role it once did during medieval or world wars, it remains in use in various conflict zones around the world. In modern war-torn regions like the Middle East or at tense borderlines, underground tunnels are still used for transporting supplies, hiding from enemy detection, or launching ambushes. This enduring use highlights the remarkable staying power of an ancient military tactic that continues to adapt to the realities of modern warfare.